Hey everyone, Becky here from the Free Rotation podcast. I just wanted to kind of give everybody an update that after we recorded this episode on June 8th, it looks like the Players Association and Riot reached an agreement to resume the 2023 LCS season. It's my understanding that talks are to continue on unresolved issues and that there has been a release of what concessions Riot is willing to make at this time. It looks like there is some contention from players and viewers that nothing really has been achieved at this time, but there has been an agreement that they will resume play on June 14th. If you're interested in checking any of that information out, we have linked it in our description for this episode, or you can Google it and check it out from there. I hope you enjoy the episode, and we'll see you next time. Bye. Why are you whispering creepy? It literally sounded like you were summoning something.
Maybe I was.
Mephistopheles just pops up right here. What happened?
Hello, Wow, I don't know why my voice cracked, but hello, everybody. Welcome back. It's been a while. I know you may not remember us, but we are the Free Rotation podcast. And today I'm joined by my other liaisons, Chris.
Hola.
And my sweetest little tiny dancer, Angie.
Hello. I'm neither tiny nor do I dance.
You do dance. For me, baby.
Oh, I'm your time.
And so today, normally we talk about a lot of different stuff if you're not familiar with this podcast, but we're actually doing something that's kind of current events and kind of related to how this podcast started. Well, back in the day, gaming stuff. And today what I wanted to talk about was something that's big in the eSports news right now, just because this is like unprecedented times for League of Legends, which is pretty much the biggest esport in competitive gaming in the world. And it's the LCS walkout. So I kind of want to give a little bit of background about what the LCS is, kind of give a little bit of background about League of Legends and that sort of competitive gaming atmosphere, and kind of talk about what's going on, because this is sort of setting the standard for what's going to happen in other esports and other collectives that involve player associations, probably in the future in any sort of gaming capacity. So if you're not familiar, LCS is the League Championship Series, and it's actually the North American version of the region that all North American teams play in. So everybody has different ones. So LAC is the European Championships. You have the LPL, which I believe is the Pacific League Champions. And all of that has been pre-established for different regions throughout anybody who competes in League of Legends esports. So LCS is actually the North American region, which is the original region that League of Legends ever spurned from. If you're not familiar with League, it's the first game Riot ever came out with in 2009. And its first competitive scene only was in North America. So LCS was the original competitive region. And since then, it's spurred different regions throughout the world, and now League is is the biggest esports in the world. Mm-hmm. Like if you look into it, I believe Worlds last year for 2022 had 5 million concurrent viewers throughout the world while the game was going on. So it's grown significantly since 2009, and it continues to be the highest viewed esports in the world.
Right. We went to Worlds here in Atlanta and it was packed. The stadium was full.
We're not talking little avid, or I guess venues with maybe 300 seating. When we were at State Farm Arena for 2 days with 150,000 people, completely sold out.
Which, to put in perspective, that's where Taylor Swift performed.
Yeah, I mean,
and Janet Jackson performed there.
No, Janet Jackson performed there. Taylor Swift performed across the street. Yeah. But that's where like our NBA
that's where the
finals
Hawks
are.
play.
Yeah, that's our. And even in other countries, it's sold out. 150,000 people easily are there. The tickets are horrifically expensive, and then on top of that, if you weren't going to Worlds last year, like in Los Angeles, they had movie theaters screening it for different cities. So we actually went, and it was a packed house.
You could go to Regal. That's right.
Yeah.
And we went and saw it there, yeah.
Yeah, so just as that, it's just sort of a context of why we're talking about this, because we're not talking like Rocket League and, you know, the tiny little viewings that people have for Rocket League. We're talking like the big scene that is happening right now. So, and sort of to give more of a history, back in 2016, due to the growth of League of Legends, it used to be that you could work your way into the competitive tier 1 teams that would compete in LCS and possibly go to Worlds and all of that. However, in 2016, it was announced by Riot that they were going to start franchising. So they were going to have 10 teams that were going to basically buy into the LCS. And what would happen is that franchise would be guaranteed a certain amount of time within the LCS. They would not have to worry about competing or dropping down into tier 2 or anything like that. Right. Because essentially, if you think about it, tier 1 is basically your pro league. You're thinking of your NFL, your big.
And what did you say was like $3 million to buy a team?
$10 million to buy in. $10 million to buy in. And then you had your tier 2 teams, which are like your farm leagues. It was supposed to be where you would farm out your talent.
Think of minor leagues.
Yeah. So like you would look at your minor league like in baseball. So in 2016, what was planned was that anybody who franchised in automatically had to basically have a mandatory challengers team, which that's the tier 2 team. The thought process was you had a tier 2 team, you were going to use that to farm new talent as older talent got older.
Or we've seen it before where a player wasn't performing or they've gotten sick and they went to their academy team and pulled up a player to play.
Right. And the thought process was that you want to keep your talent native because historically through League of Legends eSports history, the North American teams have been shit. It's just straight up how it is. The closest they've ever made it to Worlds was semifinals. They haven't made it to a finals in probably years at this point. And most of the teams that win are pretty much Asian or European teams. That's been sort of the thing. But the thought process was that you're going to farm new talent because what was happening is you would import players from other regions to play in your League of Legends teams for North America in the thought process that they would be as good as what they were in the other regions, which come to find out is not the case.
Somehow we're cursed.
Yeah, we are a cursed region. It's just straight up what it is. So what ended up happening is, as part of the requirements to franchise, all 10 teams had to have the NACL, which is the Challengers League. So those are your academy players, your tier 2 players. And so since 2017, that's sort of been where it's at. Well, we know what happened in 2020. We had COVID. And since probably around 2020, there has been a significant decline in the interest in League of Legends in North America. Now, that's just really North America and Europe, actually, but North America and Europe have had a significant decline. Now, part of that is because of Valorant.
Well, you put guns in the hands of Americans? Yeah.
Yeah.
We're going to choose that.
Yeah, and Riot really has sort of moved toward Valorant being the main competitive esports for North America. And it's fair because CSGO was the biggest one for us in North America. Call of Duty, Halo, those were big games that North Americans tend to play, Valorant being one of them. And your top teams right now in Valorant are out of the Americas, your Latin teams, your North American teams. So there's a lot of, like, looking at how Valorant's being handled and kind of relegating it off to League of Legends to kind of figure out what to do. And that's mostly because the interest has declined. A lot of people don't really care for League. It's a MOBA. Yeah, Chris doesn't even. I don't think Chris could even know what it was if he asked.
Have seen it played. Have not downloaded it. Have not played a single second. It's not something I'm interested in.
Yeah,
I just don't. It's not for me.
Yeah,
I'm not saying it's good or bad. I just don't want to play.
Yeah, right. League is a tower defense game. So the tower defense became really popular during the original World of Warcraft.
Yeah, and
then you had Dota and League. So it's the same thing. Dota used to also be really popular. You don't even hear the word Dota anymore.
Not anymore. And then, like, League now, like, if you look at the numbers, it's still growing in Asian countries. Mm-hmm. It's the number one game. But here's the thing. If you look at the history of League of Legends as a competitive esports, it's your Asian teams that win at Worlds.
Well, and to be fair, it's another game that the game designers broke. They broke League. Nobody wants to really play it anymore.
Right, and I think we and you have talked about this, that it was about 2020, and especially, I mean, with contention with Valorant coming out, we ended up playing for like 2 years.
Well, they flooded League with new champions, which were completely broken.
Yeah.
Like, you can't play any of your old school champions because they can't stand up to these new overpowered champions. This is like the same thing that happened with Magic.
Right.
Power creep.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And then the items that came out, and then, we're going to take away your items. They push an agenda they want. They want a jungle meta. They push that.
Yeah.
They move the champions and the items around it and the gameplay so that you're forced to adhere to Riot's meta.
Yeah.
So Riot dictates the meta, not the players.
Right.
And it really is stupid.
Yeah.
So ADCs are just a joke.
Yeah. I mean, and it's changed so much in the years since we played it. It's almost unfamiliar at this point. But at this time, and I actually started playing League around 2016, so I only really knew the franchise existence. But before that, there was a lot of teams that would fall off depending on how bad they were doing. New teams would spurn out from the second tiers, which is actually how Valorant works in a lot of ways now. So there's been a lot of talk, and we'll get into that, why a lot of League players want to follow sort of and reflect the Valorant competitive scene, how they're doing it. But what ended up happening is at the same time that they were franchising, they actually there was also the creation of what they call the LCSPA, which is the League Champion Series Player Association. So it's the players who represent all of it's I think 5 people on a council who represents all the players for the Tier 2 and Tier 1 players. And so they were sort of relegated to be there to talk to Riot about changes that were happening within the organizations they represented. And be able to basically say, hey, this is bullshit. Hey, we want to do this. Hey, is there a way we can, work together to make sure we have a cohesive unit when it comes to how players are treated when they compete in the LCS? So let's flash forward to May 12th. And a little bit before that, there had been rumors that Riot, due to the fact that there had been a waning interest in League of Legends, and that a lot of these organizations that were franchised were basically losing money to their teams, that they were going to allow in 2024 for these teams to drop their Tier 2 teams. Mm-hmm. So that would save them, quote unquote, save them the money. Since really what ended up happening is you were supposed to be farming this native talent. What they were doing were just importing people from other regions.
Right. And you know what I wanted to say, we've said that, the Worlds had big viewership.
Yeah.
But in the arena, what did we see? People flying in from Asia.
Yeah.
It was 2 Korean teams. You didn't see a whole lot of white people.
Yeah, I mean, it was funny because, I think a lot of the people who were there, who were American, were just happy to be there, so they were just screaming regardless of what happened. Yeah,
yay!
We were just happy to be there.
I mean, Faker was playing, so
yeah. And that was a big deal. And so, there's been a declined interest in it, and I mean, they're making money in ways like MSI. I think it was stated in the last 30 days, League of Legends was once again the highest rated or highest viewed game on Twitch because of MSI. Mm-hmm. And then when Worlds comes around, it's a huge audience that watches it, but right. The splits and stuff like that, very few people have interest, especially in North America, because of the fact that
we never do well.
Yeah, we never do well.
And again, the way I look at it, because I'm not familiar with the LCS or any of that, to me, it basically equates to imagine if the NBA stopped pouring money into the WNBA,
right?
Because the commissioner was like, "We're not paying for this anymore."
Right.
People would be upset.
Yeah.
Again, because it's not these. I guess these Tier 2 teams can't basically survive without the funding.
No, that's a really good analogy.
Yes, that's absolutely
it. The WNBA would not be able to survive without the funding from the NBA. They just don't make enough money.
That's right. Mm-hmm. So just for a breakdown of this, and that's exactly it. These teams exist for the purpose of being farmed as talent for these big teams because there's no other way to get into the LCS. If you drop those teams, they have no way to get in. There's no way unless somebody just happens to see them. What ends up happening is you've relegated all of these players to no job. They have nowhere to compete other than maybe smaller, offhand tournaments. Mm-hmm. And if you drop them, there's no what's the word? Basically there's
no recourse for
them. There's no recourse for them to get.
It's not like you get a severance package. Hey, so nice playing with you.
You just don't get to work anymore.
Right. Yeah. And it's not like you could say, hey, we're going to go, all 5 of us are going to go make a team. We're going to try and get through the relegation and promotion system. We can't do that.
Plus so there is no entry tournament to get in. No. You're just in or
You're
out.
Just in or out.
You pay the $10 million for the 10 orgs. That's it.
And then a couple of years ago, there was a big stink because it came out that League was putting all these players into a house. Mm-hmm. 20 people and saying, we may call you up. We just need you to sit here and not work and be available. And they made no money.
Yeah.
So, they really have had a history of treating their players badly.
Yeah. And so, that was the big thing for a lot of these Tier 2 players is, we have no way to get in. And we'll get into it a little bit because Valorant's system is very different than League's system. But basically, unless an org sells out their position, that's it. That's the 10 teams in LCS, and that's it.
That's dumb.
It is really dumb. And the idea was that they wanted to promote structure and stability for these teams and sort of know where their money is going when they're, paying out these teams for competing.
The problem is you don't end up with what are necessarily the best teams.
Right.
You just end up with the teams that had the most money or the most sponsorship.
Exactly. And here's the thing. They don't have a salary cap.
Yeah.
So you can pay buku bucks to get somebody like Faker, who's considered the best mid laner in the world.
And Faker has said he'd come to the NA.
Yeah, and he has. And I mean, his team pays a shit ton of money for him to be there. But then you're relegated to, you could just pay whatever money you want, and you don't have to pay this newer talent to farm them, because all you have to do is just drop some cash on somebody and say good luck.
Well, it's not just that. It's also from a competitive player standpoint, fuck being tier 2 and maybe getting called.
Yeah.
I am not going to be really insanely the top 1% of 1% of 1% of anything I do, and there is no compensation for it. Unless someone says so.
And then these teams have these players sign contracts, non-compete contracts.
Yeah,
I'm not gonna.
Yeah, you can't compete for at least a split.
Right. And I'm not gonna try and get on another team while I'm on your academy team that you never pick from or call on.
Right. So this allegedly was going to happen in 2024. On May 12th, it was announced by Riot that starting Summer Splits 2023, which started June 1st, they could drop their teams. They did not speak to the LCSPA about any of this. They didn't really negotiate with anybody prior to doing this. They just said, we're going to leave it to the orgs to make that decision. We're going to go ahead and allow it. And I believe within 10 days of that, 8 out of 10 organizations had dropped their teams.
Yeah, if they're already losing money, they're sure not going to try to keep funneling money into a second-tier organization that they're not even using.
Well, the problem is, what you see is that you say you're funneling money into these second-tier teams. Most of these players made maybe $2,000 to $5,000 per game. Your big players in the big teams probably made 6 figures per game easily. And so the big problem came in you may have a small, let's say 3% of your cash revenue actually goes into your tier 2 teams. But to say that that's the problem is not addressing the actual overhead big problem, which is there's no salary cap, there's no commissioner. And honestly, what they're doing is they don't want to pay these players that they are never going to use, because they know that they could just pay for somebody who has a famous name and a brand already and pay for them to come to the U.S.
Yeah, but on Riot's end, they wouldn't realistically want to enforce a salary cap, because they do open it up again to another org. They want whoever's got the most money to come in and buy in for $20 million or whatever.
That's a big thing for a while. A lot of people are pissed off at Riot.
That's horse shit to begin with. I can't believe everybody went along with that at the jump. Because if you think about, baseball.
Yeah.
If the entire Major League Baseball was 10 teams and the commissioner went to 10 or 100 billionaires, said you can buy your way in for $20 billion.
Yeah.
There is no salary cap. No one would watch baseball. No one would give a shit.
No,
there
it's
is
the
no
same
competition.
thing with the NFL when they. I remember when they instituted the salary caps and the teams cap, and suddenly these teams that were winning the Super Bowl every single year. I mean, other than the Patriots, that just is what it is. But they just you got a fair play.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. Well, it is actually 7 teams, but it's a majority of the teams dropped them within 10 days. So what ends up happening is LCSPA, or Players, I'll just call them the Players Association.
Union.
Yeah, comes out and basically says, Riot did not address any of this. We had no idea this was coming. We didn't even have a chance to respond to it. And Phil Aram, who actually, I believe, used to be the owner of Evil Geniuses, is actually the head of the Players Association now.
Yeah, I was going to say, I bet Evil Geniuses, TSM, and Unicorns of Love didn't drop their
No,
academy.
Unicorns of Love isn't part of it.
They didn't do it anymore?
Well, they're not in LCS. TSM's trying to sell out their spot to go to the LEAC anyways.
Yeah.
They don't want to even deal with the LCS anymore. They just want to go to Europe because LEC is still popular.
That's a whole other part
That's
of it.
a whole other big thing because that goes back to the whole thing with their owner and all that stuff too. Mm-hmm. So what ends up happening is after that 10 days and the 7 teams drop, the Players Association decides that they're going to enact a vote. I believe it's a Sunday at 8:30 about whether they're going to do a walkout. This is unprecedented. This has never happened in any other esports where there's a possible strike coming from the players. And basically they need, I think that's 50 players on the Players Association. They needed 26. Over 60% voted to walk out. So they had 5 things that they were asking for. And here's the thing. This all happened, I think the official date of the walkout is like May 29th. Summer Split's supposed to start June 1st, which is the big split that you play to get into Worlds to begin with. And so they stated that they were not going to play. They're on strike, and they had 5 things they were asking for from Riot. Number 1 was institute the Valorant-style promotion and relegation system into the LCS and NACL, which, if you're familiar with how Valorant works, we have regular Valorant eSports, which is Challengers, Masters, all of that stuff. Or, I'm sorry, Masters and Champions.
Champions, yeah.
There's a second-tier version called Challengers. During Challengers, other teams can... And we've seen it with streamers who have bought teams and all of that stuff. Mm-hmm. Other teams can compete in Challengers to go to Ascension. At Ascension, all these teams compete. And if you win Ascension, you are now put into Masters and Champions. You can compete in a normal system.
You can earn your way in.
Right.
That's how Tiny's team, they won their way into VCT.
Yeah.
They're in.
That's how you get, that's
every game in the world.
Right.
Yeah.
Now, and there's a lot of talk that maybe there should be more teams allowed through Valorant, but right now they're only doing it one team wins, one team gets in, which I think is fair. If your team is dog shit in Champions and Masters, you need to be relegated back into second tier and fight your way back.
Fight your way back.
Yeah, that's fun.
Yeah.
And these players, they had the option, like, you know, or say you're playing in for your spot in Ascension, and somebody's like, you know what? That cereal for dinner is really good. Get him on our team.
Yeah, I mean...
You know, you don't make it, but you're noticed.
Yeah, and I mean, a lot of these...
You've played on a world stage.
Yeah, and if you're good, someone will notice it. And if there is a route to get you on a team, so be it.
Right.
Like, who cares?
Mm-hmm.
It was May 23rd that the walkout was approved. So it was, 10 days prior to Summer Split?
Yeah.
So this is what comes out May 23rd, basically. Riot, to this, states that it would be counterproductive to the current system because of the $10 million buy-in that the franchises have, or the franchise players have.
That's all right. Leave them there and just let other people play in.
Yeah. So they were saying it would
piss off those 10 teams
because
they paid $10 million to be there, and the other teams earned their way in for free.
Riot didn't give a shit when we used to have to pay for runes. And now, and then they made them all free.
Yeah,
as masteries, you didn't reimburse me.
They said it would also dilute the equity of the teams and put a downward pressure on the revenue that the teams were getting from Riot and any sort of sponsorship, which to me doesn't make any sense because you have the same.
Does.
You have this. I mean, it makes sense, but you still also have the same premise in Valorant. I mean, you have these teams that are already they're not franchised, but they're already into Valorant at this point.
Yeah, but it'd be what Riot's saying. What it sounds like is that these teams would receive less sponsorship because there'd be more competition.
Right.
However,
but that makes it healthy.
That makes a better system because
where people want to compete and want to try and earn it.
It's like the old Magic system that they did away with, where you could be a Platinum Pro. That all went away when they got rid of Planeswalker points and how many points you earned from SCG events. Mm-hmm. And now it's just like, no one wants to be a pro Magic player anymore. Right. Who gives a shit? Like, there's no...
Yeah. There's no incentive.
Yeah, that's
If you don't have an incentive to do better or play harder or do anything, you're not going to. You have 10 teams that all you have to do is show up and not fuck up, and you're on your team. There's nothing that says... Yeah. You have to farm good talent.
They don't even have to keep a rank up.
It doesn't matter.
Yeah.
They're the 10 that can play.
Yep.
If you're a sponsor, you have to sponsor one of these teams, even if they're dog shit.
Right.
But it creates such a narrow vision or a narrow tunnel of, again, if you're a huge esports sponsor or energy drink or whatever you want to sponsor, you've 10 options.
Yeah.
And 4 of them are already taken by other companies. So you either have to offer more or a better incentive to get onto this narrow playing field that... You may not even want to sponsor these guys.
Right.
Like,
imagine that Reyna we played against the other day with her 71% headshot rating. Imagine it was real. She'll never be a pro player because nobody's ever going to know who she is. Yeah. Even if she legitimately had a 71% headshot rating. Which, by the way, is like 40% more than 10s.
Yeah.
So...
I mean, it wasn't real, but...
Yeah.
But it's the same thought process. Like
she could shoot you through 2 walls around a corner.
Yeah.
Well, on top of it, there's no ramifications to these teams not farming from their talent because there's no salary cap. You can't... If you have a salary cap and you can't pay for a Jensen or a Faker or any of those guys who come from another region that are really, really good... You have to. If you can pay for that, you're going to pay for that before you pay to farm any talent on the low end of your
Not only
academy
that,
teams.
But other than winning worlds, what's your incentive
Right.
to do that in the first place?
Right.
If I can pay these other, I don't know how many people are on a league team, 5?
5.
If you
5
can pay
with, I
these,
think, 2 alternates.
Yeah,
if you,
two
can,
walls.
if you can pay these other 7 people $200,000 each and not pay him $1.6 million, you're still one of 10 teams that are going to be shown on every stream.
Yep.
Why? I don't give a shit. Hope they win, but I'm
Yeah.
not paying an extra $1 million per game to guarantee, not even guarantee it, but make a better chance, because you're already, no matter what happens, 10% to win.
Well, on the devil's
From the jump.
The other side of that, though, is say you have somebody like Faker, who you've paid $1.6 million to be on your team. It's not only the fact that you believe you're going to have a better route to Worlds, the sponsorship and the ad revenue from the fact that you have that brand of him because he is the best of the best. I think that's a lot of incentive for these teams as well, is you're going to pay for that money, because a lot of times the NA players are more so brand names than any sort of like
Skill.
talent.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Like
Double Lift.
You know Double Lift, not because, and I know he's a good player, but you know him because he's a brand.
He's a brand, and they would rebuild that team around him and still couldn't win.
Yeah,
like
I mean,
at some point you gotta look at your
You
guy.
gotta look at it. So there's 3. So the second one that was requested is Riot commit a revenue pool for players. Now Riot, not the orgs. Riot commit a revenue pool for player salaries to $300,000 per NACL team per year. So what they're asking for is not $300,000 per player. They're asking for $300,000 per year for a team. Riot came back and said they would do it one time.
And there's what, 10 CL teams or whatever?
There would be 10 NACL teams, $300,000 one time.
So they're asking them to pay $3 million, a third of what one of the teams paid
to buy in. Yep.
one time.
Yep.
Right, go fuck themselves.
Okay.
Especially when you're talking about a multi-$100 billion company.
No, it's a small indie company.
Yeah.
I'm just kidding.
I mean, if you think
With
about
87 years experience.
Yeah.
And, never mind.
Yeah.
let me do some quick math here. So they were asking them to pay the players
$3 million a year.
total. Yeah.
Per team. Well, that needs to also be emphasized. Just if anybody missed that in the first place, per team, not per player.
So they were saying they needed to pay these players that $42,000 a year.
Yep.
Yeah, that's it.
That's below the poverty line in most places.
Yeah, you couldn't survive in California on that.
No.
Mm-mm.
So
That's why they live in these big houses together.
You have to.
And stream and try and,
So they were asking for them to have $15 an hour jobs.
Yep.
$18 an hour jobs.
Yep.
Like,
yeah, like
okay.
McDonald's.
Yeah.
Yeah.
the next is allow LCS orgs to partner with affiliates for cost sharing. I didn't really understand this one. I'm thinking what that meant is like other big orgs could affiliate with other big orgs to sort of eat the cost together.
I'm wondering if it's Riot says that once you're part of the LCS or whatever the thing is, you're not allowed to compete in any other tournaments.
That's you know what? That's a good point. Or like partner with anybody that's not a Riot approved sponsor.
Well, imagine you remember when the football team owned. I think it was 103s. It was a basketball team that owned.
No, Golden Guardians. It was Golden State Warriors.
Owned it, and then, and that was Valorant, right?
No, that was League.
That was League. So they're probably stopping stuff like that.
Yeah.
Which, why?
Well, and I mean, think
you
about
don't want
that.
to pay your
because
players.
Riot is not going to control the Golden State Warriors.
Right.
Yeah.
And that's true. I'm
The
thinking
NBA commissioner is going to tell them to go fuck themselves.
Well, and think about Valorant right now. You have like Disguised Toast. You have Ludwig, XQC. They made Valorant teams. They're not affiliated with Riot whatsoever, and they made Valorant teams. Imagine if you had somebody like just some random streamer who made an LCS team or affiliated with an LCS team that wasn't part of the brand.
Toast just bought a League team, so I wonder which of those sold their teams.
Well, no, he bought it into NACL after they dropped all those players, so he now has bought a team into that because of the whole Tier 2 issue. But that's a good point. I mean, if you're not a Riot approved, that makes sense. Okay. Number 4 is Riot guarantee LCS minimum contracts for the 5 players that win LCS Summer Split each year. Or summer finals, yeah. So basically that the people, so if
you get a 2-year contract.
Well, basically if you win, let me back this up. What you've seen previously are these big teams that win LCS finals. The next year, they're completely disbanded.
Completely different. Or you win the split, and the people who won that split aren't the ones going into anything else further.
Right.
They buy imports.
Right.
Well, now that we've made it, let's ditch these guys.
Yeah, we won finals, so we look good.
We
so
kind of
let's
saw
go
that
get these.
in Valorant too, though. To be fair,
and so they want to be able to. They
Sentinels
want
completely.
Well, they want LCS to guarantee that doesn't happen. Riot basically said to this, it's not necessary for a healthy and developmental league, that it should be left to the organizations to make that decision depending on how their team is being
So it seems like Riot wants all the money, but none of the responsibility of having to govern these things.
Well, and a lot of it is that they're scared of the organizations. That's what I think it is. They're scared of the orgs pulling out of this, that they put their money in, and that Riot is trying to basically like waffle between making players happy and making the orgs happy, but we'll make the orgs happy before the players.
Yeah, but if you make it a more
there's no org without players.
Well, but if you make a healthier gaming environment, like challenge-wise, you'll get more interest on the NA side, which will generate more money.
Right.
Right,
and that's the thing is, like, you're talking about the waning interest in League. Yeah, it's been the last couple of years, but that's because the LCS has been shit.
That, and you literally created a pyramid scheme.
Yeah.
Yeah, and there's been, if you look at, like, the gossip about League over the years, there are players that people feel like, remember when I said earlier they push a meta?
Sure.
So say there's this, young jungler that they're like, my God, he's amazing. So they force the meta to like showcase this person on this, one org. So I feel like Riot also works with the orgs that way, because I genuinely believe that's legitimate.
Yeah.
I mean, again, if these orgs are giving them more money, why wouldn't Riot? Like,
hey, why don't you make it a jungle meta?
Yeah, I mean, and it's sort of the thing is, like, they're promoting their game at the same time, so if there's a waning interest, they don't want to funnel money into it. But at the same time, where the interest lies are in these countries where they have been winning. I mean, you would think that you would do something to promote that, but I think because of the way Valorant is, and I think the way it's been for the last couple of years, I think they've just sort of declined in the interest of making that happen. Number 5, which is the last one, is to institute a 3 out of 5 roster continuity rule to provide players on released NACL rosters first priority in maintaining their slots in the upcoming NACL season if the majority continue to compete together. So basically, this is common in other esports. It's slot ownership should remain. That's what Riot's basically saying. But basically, what they're saying is they don't want teams to just split up willy nilly.
Yeah. Three of the 5 people have to be there. 60% have to stay.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
So
as part of this team.
Right. If you win a spot into Worlds, 3 of those 5 people have to be who play.
Right. Well, even in NACL, if you have a good NACL team and you want to start moving people around, you can't just drop all 5 players. You have to actually keep 3 of the 5 if they all agree to stay. Which is fair because the majority of your I mean, look at it. We play with 2 people. Our team is dog shit. We play with 3 of us in a 5 stack. We generally win okay, even if it's not the full 5 stack. Riot basically answered that saying slot ownership should remain with the orgs in order to provide greater continuity and structure.
Well, no, to be fair, that is, if an org has paid in and you play for that org.
Yeah.
I mean, Riot really can't, I don't think Riot could. They would have to rework their entire business partnership with the orgs.
Yeah. So Riot has basically stated that there will be in negotiations with the Player Association, but they really are standing firm against a lot of the requests of the Player Association. And like I stated, this was enacted May 23rd. June 1st rolls around, and that's when the summer split's supposed to happen. And the rumors prior to that, the week leading up to the summer split starting, is that Riot basically stated that the orgs have to have a completed roster to compete in summer split. So basically Riot was saying, hey, fuck the players. If they're out, find scab players. So the orgs were basically enlisted to get anybody they could. And Riot actually ended up lifting the restriction of your rank for people to compete.
So let's get this straight. They can't do it for the Players Association, but they'll do it for scabs.
Yes.
Because we're not going to let you.
Let's put this in perspective. What they were talking about doing is paying the scab players. And if you're not familiar with the term scab, it's individuals when there is a strike that kind of take advantage of the strike by making money, by slotting themselves in and making money off of it. But they wanted college players to play in it, and then anybody of any rank to play in it if they wanted to find players.
Which, and to be fair, if I'm a kid and I want to be a pro league
it's your
player,
only shot.
I'm going to take advantage of this in a minute. You call me a scab. This is my shot.
Yeah. So what they ended up saying is that the orgs were going to pay $800 to $2,000 per game for these scab players, which is significantly different than a lot of what was being asked for to begin with. And I was like, oh, talk about really being at the bottom of the barrel on this.
Well, that, and even if you go in there and make a name for yourself, you're not going to make the team, but maybe it helps you stream better.
Yeah.
Exactly.
Like, it creates future profitability.
Well, and there was a lot of talk too with the Players Association, which wasn't an official thing, but allowing these, and I think a lot of older players have said this, making a lot of these players, if you're so concerned about the ad revenue and revenue into the game, if NA is not going to be a talent-based region, make it a personality-based region. Have these people stream. Make the stories about these players. People are interested in the stories of these players, and you're going to get people interested. That's why, going back to Valorant, if you looked at the women's, what is it called? What's the women's? Game Changers. If you looked at the Valorant Game Changer stuff, people really didn't give two shits about Game Changers.
Oh, but the drama.
The drama came good because what happened? Toast bought a Game Changers team and had a bunch of streamers playing in it. Guess what had a huge uptick in viewership? Game Changers.
Yeah. I want to see Valkyrie play. I want to see Sidian play.
Yeah, you want to see these people play, and you hear all these women who are like, I can't believe they just got a bunch of streamers. Look at all the talent. And then you want to see whether they can beat the shit out of these people.
Well, and in EU, there was drama on of different levels.
Yeah.
There's always drama on the women's leagues.
Yeah, so
it's just drama.
But the storylines are what people come for. And if you have a storyline, if you don't have the talent, have the personality.
There was a fist fight in Game Changers VCT. I want to see it again.
Exactly. So I think that's sort of an
jumped
important...
over the... Yeah. I need this in my
I'm
life.
just saying, Valorant, you want to get some personality, give me a call.
Yeah.
I will say some wild shit for money.
Well, and so the Players Association came out and said, please don't do this. Don't be a scab player. You know, we're standing up for all players, and we want to make sure it's a healthy and competitive thing in the future.
Well, that, and they're trying to give you, as that college kid, a path forward to play. But again, you don't know how long it's going to take if you're that college kid. So, like, you can't blame them. Like, they're just trying to get out there and make a name.
Mm-hmm.
But you also, by doing that, you're hurting your future endeavors because, we could just find whoever.
Yeah, exactly. The whole process of this is it's almost David and Goliath, and you can almost kind of see both sides, but I really stand with the players in this. There is no real history or anything or backbone or foundation that anybody could break to say, like, what should we do in these circumstances? Esports have been the Wild West for years now, and even though it's becoming more organized, it's becoming more professional, it's still a dumpster fire when you think about it. It's just less of a dumpster fire.
There's no regulatory, anything. Yeah.
I don't know. I can't even... I played competitive Halo, and we did not get paid anywhere near that. But again, it was before streaming was a thing.
Yes. And before really esports took off.
Yeah, it was.
People only knew what esports were unless you played video games, and people now even are like, you play esports, blah blah. I mean, I've had this full conversation with people I work with, and I'll be like, competing in esports is a thing that you can have your kids do now, and they're like, what? Blah blah blah. I'm like, your kids are going to make almost as much money as an NBA player.
Military has esports teams.
Yeah.
And that's the people's jobs is to play esports and recruit.
It is the way the world is becoming because video games, I mean, I hate to say this, video games are such a prevalent thing. It's not a bad thing in my opinion.
Hey, we're close to Ender's Game.
Yeah.
Give me a second. I've lost my train of thought.
I really missed the boat on that getting paid thing.
I always said if I was 10 years younger, I would have gone into competitive esports.
So Riot is kind of between a rock and a hard place because if they didn't establish at the beginning when these orgs bought in, if they didn't establish any of these rules or limitations, they can't go back and rewrite it.
Yeah.
Especially if they didn't put terms on it. They would have to go to court. There's going to be a lot of legal shenanigans involved.
Well,
however, they also aren't remembering that there is no league if they don't have players.
Right.
The thing is, those orgs are going to want, if not all,
incentives.
a percentage of their money back if you start letting other teams
Exactly.
Because they thought they were buying into an exclusive thing.
Right.
However, if it's that exclusive...
Right. If I buy into a country club and you start letting in every pleb and scab, I'm going to want
Well, it's
money
also
back.
like a rock and a hard place because what you're seeing is the declining interest in Valorant that you've bought into, or Valorant League. You've bought in $10 million to compete in this forever, and there's a declining interest. You're losing money. And the option is to maybe make it more healthy is to have other teams compete against your teams, but you've spent all this money to be in it. But that was before all of this started happening. I mean, hell, it was before any of us knew what COVID was.
If you're losing money as the org, requesting, if Riot goes through and lets other teams in, request a percentage of your money back and start actually farming
Talent.
more personality and better talent,
Right.
because you'll have to.
Right. I mean,
You'll be forced to, because other teams will be coming in and beating the shit out of your guys who aren't that good.
And I want to point this out. And I mean, like, Valorant has only been around for 3 years, but you rarely see you see some import players in other teams coming to the United States to play on a Valorant team because they have a healthy farming mentality. You want the best players on your team because at any point in time, your team could be relegated back to the tier 2 team. A new team can come up to the tier 1 team. So Riot has pushed the LCS summer split beginning 2 weeks back, and basically have said if we cannot resolve this in the next 2 weeks, LCS is canceled, summer split is canceled, and you guys cannot compete in Worlds.
Okay.
Okay.
I mean, we don't go anyways.
Competing anyways.
Yeah.
Yeah.
You're threatening with something we're already doing to you.
Yeah. I mean,
Yeah.
it's not like we're all like really good teams that always end up at Worlds. It's not the case.
Well, not just that. It'd be like my wife threatening me, like, if you don't do the dishes, I'm going to suck your dick more. I'm like, oh, you got me. Really not going to do those dishes.
I mean, it's true.
Oh, we don't even have dish soap.
It's like really hard to have a hollow threat like that when it's like,
who gives a shit? That's what we're already doing.
Man, I'm not gonna have a job, so why do I give two shits? Like,
I'm gonna send you to your room where your computer and books are,
Ooh,
and your game consoles.
No,
all the
Mom,
And close your
pornography in the
door, and you're
world.
not allowed to talk to us at all. Oh no!
we're not even taking your cell phone away. Ooh.
You can order DoorDash whenever you want. No, Mom, no.
No, you son of a bitch!
How dare you give me exactly what I was already doing?
So yeah, I mean, it's just sad. I mean, it's one of those things where it goes to show you that even how flashy everything has gotten with these like big names, big games, the sponsorships, all that stuff. There's no real like foundation or requirements that are required in a lot of bigger sports, like a commissioner,
Salary
caps. That doesn't exist in these games. So now what you really end up having are having these players who are just kind of dumped out because, hey, we lost some money the last 2 years. And this is sort of why it's such a big thing, is it's finally players answering back. Like, it used to be, hey, that's what they did, that we can't fight against it. Now it's like, hey, we definitely can fight against it.
This was going to have to be the outcome from the onset. Like, you can't have a worldwide system where you say this is the best of the best, but it's pay to play and not earn your way in.
Right.
Yeah.
The UFC is hot garbage in their management. But if you're really good, you're fucking in there and you're going to get paid.
Yeah.
It doesn't matter that they do try to push fighters, but that fighter loses, fucking sucks. Somebody was better than you. Move on with life.
Ronda Rousey, perfect example.
Yeah.
Get knocked out in the first, 7 seconds?
And the thing is, like, they really wanted to promote her because it was at the beginning of the women's UFC divisions.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And she was a good judo champion. She was a judoka.
Yeah.
She's
good.
She's good at judo. The problem is she's not good when you punch her in the face. The end.
Yeah.
Yeah.
She can't recover from that. Like,
And she did not.
Yeah, Holly Holm, who is a kickboxer, but boxer primarily, beat the dog shit out of her, and Holly Holm was not... No one thought she was going to be champion. I think it's still, to this day, the biggest UFC upset, odds-wise, in Vegas.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Because UFC pushed Ronda Rousey so hard. I mean, again, Holly Holm came in there, proved that she was better. And
she's a boxer.
Judo's great. You can throw people. Sometimes you get them around the neck and choke them out. They can't grab you by the neck if they're unconscious on the floor.
Right. Mm-hmm. Well, and it's sort of the same thing. It's like, that's a perfect example of what this is. It's a pay to play instead of a pay to...
It is.
Or
earn your way in.
Earn your way in. Mm-hmm. And I think even if there have been stories like this in the past, we've never seen it on a scale as big as this because League of Legends is the biggest esport in the world. In LCS itself is the original region that this came from. Like everything that comes out of League of Legends came from the LCS. The first tournament was in one of the casters' basement.
Right.
And that was the LCS. That was it. And now what it has grown to is State Farm Arena sold out World Championship competitive.
People flying in from Asia.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So you're looking at the grassroots of your competitive scene saying this is not right.
Yeah. And talking about salary caps, let's think of it this way. League is a 5-man team. You cannot 1v5. It's not a game where you could be the best at what you are and win it alone. So when we say salary cap, let's say without a salary cap, Becky's the best there is. I mean, just phenomenal. We're going to pay her $1.6 million a game. We're going to pay everybody else whatever it takes to get them here.
20 grand.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I'm just happy to be here.
But you know what? There's another really good player. You know what, Chris? We're going to pay you 1.3. You know, and we need at least 3v5. You know, it won't be me. Like, Kat, we're going to pay you 7.2. But then in salary cap, it's like you only have 3 million per team. It's like allocating points in Warhammer.
Yeah.
So I look at it like with the no salary cap and so look at college football. Imagine there was no salary cap and these teams could pay the players they wanted.
Yeah.
Alabama would have an NFL caliber team tomorrow.
Yeah.
Arkansas, you can go fuck yourself.
Yeah.
UCLA, you're a good school. You're not playing football no more.
Yeah.
You just would never be able to compete with the 6 or 7 big teams.
Yeah.
With infinite money. Again, imagine you were a college player, you're a quarterback, and Nick Saban's like, I'm going to give you $50 million a year to be our quarterback. I'm not going to the NFL.
Right.
Fuck the NFL. I'm
Right.
getting paid here now.
And you know,
And it causes stagnation in the environment. You don't have those games where Auburn upsets Alabama because they're getting fucking curb stomped by just different human beings.
Yeah, Baylor comes out of nowhere.
Yeah, you don't have those
Or that Christian school that
Cinderella
popped up.
stories. Yeah,
Yeah.
Baylor, TCU.
Yeah, TCU.
None of those schools have a shot in hell of competing with Georgia, Alabama, fucking Ohio.
Right.
Michigan.
Why invest the time and the money into farming good talent? People who are good but could probably be great if you can just pay somebody $10 million to show up on your team because they've proven it in another world.
Yeah.
Like it does. I mean, I understand it functionally from the idea that it's like short-term gain for long-term loss. Maybe, I don't know. But the problem is what you're looking at is stagnation into the game itself. We all know who the good players are. We all know that certain teams are going to do better than other teams. What we don't know...
we know who they perpetrate as
you have no idea who the good players are because they can't even earn their way in.
Right.
Right.
If they have a
relegation system?
No, but even if you're a really good player, but you have like an attitude or a problem with the other people that would be on your team, and they're like, nah, you're never going to hear that guy.
Yeah.
No.
You better hope you see him stream.
Yeah.
Because otherwise, you're just never going to hear him. And it's just like, if you can't be a team and earn your way in, who gives a shit?
Yeah.
Well, and knowing like some of the academy players and stuff, and even some pro players in EU, I don't really know any NA, but the amount of time that they have to practice, it is ridiculous how many hours a day that they want you to practice. And then you don't get paid for that.
No.
At these academy teams, your whole day, like 12 to 14 hours a day, they can't.
Your salary is based off how well you do one time in a 3v5.
Right.
In a
And that's
best of
why
3.
they're asking, like, just guarantee a salary.
$40,000 a year.
Because we have to survive.
Right.
And all of their time is just practicing.
Well, that's what, before we got sponsored when I was playing Halo, we played 12, 14 hours a day, 7 days a week.
Yeah.
Because when you started going to these tournaments, that's the kind of cohesiveness you had to have.
Yeah.
Right.
It was just what it was. And we weren't getting paid for that until we were sponsored. And then we started getting paid a salary, and then we got paid for how many victories we had per tournament and showing up and blah, blah, blah. But until then, but there was at least a path forward. We understood that we were practicing so that we would be paid in the future.
And I think that's what the NACL is, what it's supposed to
What
be.
it wants to do.
It wants it to be that you are not on the main you're not on the main stage, but if you practice hard enough and you get good enough,
you get cohesive.
Your
you can fucking get there.
your organization is going to recognize that, and you're going to be pulled up. That is not what has happened.
And I get why they want you to practice like that, especially as your team, because like just playing with you and Becky for Soul and Wires, Kat, I still don't know what the hell he's going to do half the time. But I know exactly what decisions you're going to make and what you're going to do. Like I know exactly what Sage and Brimstone, what their capabilities and limitations are. And mine with that agent.
Yeah.
So I get the practicing to where it is literally like, it's like martial arts.
It's muscle memory.
It's muscle memory. Exactly.
You know, I know this angle. I know if they're pushing here, I can throw this there. I can blind here.
And sometimes you'll throw out an ability. You wouldn't even think about it.
Think about
but some part of you.
think about like just how like an example of how we play Valorant. Okay, think about when we're on defender side split. None of us say any word about what we're doing. We all just do what we do. Everybody knows. We know Wires is going to go A. You and Angie are going to be mid. Kat may be somewhere, I don't know. And then I'm going to be on B.
Well, and in League, it is crucial for the ADC and support
to
be
work
where they're
together
supposed to be.
because
Yeah.
they are a duo.
And more so than any other one on their team, they need to be in perfect sync.
Yeah, and then I mean you have to decide whether you're going to have an aggressive jungler or a passive jungler, one
And
who's
you
going to
really-
farm or who's going to be
Yeah.
ganking in your lane.
Well, again, we don't get paid to play unless you're listening, Dunkin' Donuts, and you want to sponsor us because I
Yeah.
do love your product and I would love to hawk it on stream.
yeah,
Also, Rain Energy Drink, Nike, pretty much anybody.
I'll
Anyway,
take Best Buy and Micro
HelloFresh.
Center.
Yeah.
Let's go. Anybody. Matter of fact, Tampax. Here we go.
Use them every day.
Yeah.
They are fantastic.
I wanna make-
Absorbent. No leaks on this end.
Always with wings. Let's go.
Don't give a shit.
Well, so I wanted to talk about it. We were talking about what topics we want to talk about. I thought this was sort of important because it's if you don't follow League, it may not be important to you. But what it's essentially doing is setting the standard of what's going to happen for any major competitive esport in the future. Because League is the leading esport, so what they do is going to probably impact how other esports handle this.
Well,
And it's just, to me, the craziest part of this, and I'm sorry to go on this like one last tangent, is the fact that we have one company that has two separate games with two separate systems. That's what's craziest to me. You have Valorant, that is the promotion relegation system, and League, which was the buy-in franchise system. And we can't even figure out what to do about this now because we have one game doing one thing and the other doing it. And that's the same company.
the thing is, and I'll be honest, I don't think FPS like shooter those style players would have went for that shit. For the 10 million buy-in. They'd be like, go fuck yourself. I'm better than everybody else on your team.
And the thing is, like, especially, I've played League. I've played League for, God, you played it nearly 10 years. I've played it like 7 years at this point. League is very much a team game at the end of the day, but at the same time, Valorant, I feel like Valorant is very much more of a team-based game. You can sit in lane all day and just farm until you're powerful enough. Valorant, if you start going down quickly as a team, it's going to be rough. So,
it sucks.
So I can see why it's much different.
It's hard to come back in
Yeah.
Valo because
Yeah.
you're down guns. It's a gun gap and not
well,
a
I was
skill
about to
gap
say, and you
sometimes.
respawn in League. Like you can hold them down for 20 seconds. Somebody's gonna respawn.
Yeah.
So I mean, it's just sad to see that. I'm trying. Angie's got to poop. Anyways, it's just sad to see that even within its own company that's a problem.
All right.
So.
Oh.
Oh. All right, guys.
Never mind. She's handled it.
Yeah. Good night. See you later.
What's my
Have a
stomach?
great one. Bye.
Bye.
Love you.